I'm Gerry. I'm the Head of Client Success at Glean In, which hopefully some of you are familiar with. We're exhibiting over the other side of the hall over there. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon in the post-lunch graveyard slot. So hopefully none of you have come here for a nap. We're here to talk about community marketing. Before I start, a bit of housekeeping. There is Glisser are providing the tech for Q&A and also for a poll for today's session. So there's a QR code up here or a link that you can click on, and that will allow you to submit questions for the panel. What we're also going to do, if we can put it up at the start of our session, is just have a quick poll. So I think it's coming up on the screen. Before we start, we're just interested to know actually who's doing community marketing, whether you're all practicing it already or whether you're here to learn a bit more about it. So there's the question over on the screen over there. Who's practicing community marketing at the moment? You've never heard of it, you're doing it a bit, or it's an integral part of your marketing plan for your events. That'll take a few minutes for those results to filter through. So while we wait to do that, I will introduce you to our panel, who's going to help us to understand a bit more about community marketing. This is a bit of a dubious milestone for me because I think it's the first panel I've been on where I'm old enough to be the parent of all of the other panelists. So we have three brilliant young marketers here. Maxie Smith is from Clarion. She is from Imago Tech Media, where she's brand marketing manager. I'm going to read my notes so I get the shows right. DTX and UCX Europe, DTX and UCX Manchester, as well as Imago's Leaders Summit portfolio. Next to Maxie is Raki Masha, who is Senior Digital Strategist at Closer Still Media, who you may have noticed are filling up half of the rest of the halls here this week, which is why it takes so long to get a sandwich. Raki works across Closer Still's entire portfolio of events, which, as you'll have seen if you walk down the corridor, includes HR, medical and healthcare, technology, and even the veterinary sector. And then finally, we have Sophie, who is marketing manager at Montgomery Group, where she's responsible for the marketing campaigns for IFE Manufacturing, and Specialty and Fine Food Fair. So all of the great food shows in the UK. The first question is, let's put this one to you, Sophie. What is community marketing for you? What does community marketing mean for you?
Thanks, Gerry. I think it's bringing together communities that are like-minded individuals. They're focusing on similar topics or challenges. And obviously, as an event professional, that is what we hopefully do, is bring together those like-minded audiences, and our events serve to answer any queries or concerns or challenges that they're facing within their industries. I think as well, it's thinking more around leveraging kind of the organic side of communities, nourishing those conversations online or offline, trying to engage with your target audience all year round. Obviously, during the pandemic, we all had to jump online and think about other ways where we could bring these communities together that we're engaging with. And I think that's a really important part of community marketing, is trying to understand how we can deliver on a 365 basis as an event organizer. I know at Montgomery Group, we're trying to move towards, with our brands and the events, becoming more industry leaders rather than just event organizers, and trying to understand the values of those communities that we're trying to serve.
Fantastic. And in a summary, would that be a similar summary for either of you? That's what community marketing means for your organisations?
Yeah, similar to what Sophie said. Like we at Closer Still, we've had to pivot towards that because of the pandemic. But it's also about gatekeeping content, making it exclusive, and which is ultimately for us enabled us to generate additional revenue.
Yeah, it's very similar for us at Clarion as well. So for us, it's kind of about connecting and engaging with people to create long-lasting relationships. I think that's kind of what community marketing means to us. And also it's the focus on the brand side of things as well. So you kind of need to make your community marketing strategy based around your brand. Personally, that's what I think.
Okay, great. So let's go back to you, come to you, Rakeem, now. More specifically, tell us about some of the things that you're doing in community marketing at Closer Still at the moment.
So since we've come out of the pandemic, we were utilising quite a lot of community platforms. So on our learning division, for example, we have a wide variety of conferences, webinars, virtual events and physical events, and what we've been able to do is condense that onto one platform, and we've been able to send out personalized content. We've enabled the industry to be able to network together on this one platform. We've been able to offer gatekeeped events, so only a very exclusive small pool of audience can have access to that. And then on our veterinary portfolio, so it's a very small industry, we've also been able to adopt the same methods. So rather than just talking to them 3 months out from your show, you've actually got to speak to them now 12 months throughout the whole year. So we've been doing that pretty well. We've been able to assess what we've been doing, and it's going pretty well, can't lie. And then another thing that we're doing as well is social sharing. So we work with Gleanin. So we send out personalised speaker, attendee and delegate banners with their picture and their job titles, and they're able to share that on social media, which then goes to their network, which ultimately is great for us because we need to get them to our show. So it's essentially free marketing organically. So that's what we'll be doing at the moment.
And that's a similar experience for the two of you as well. That's broadly the kind of activities you're involved in at the moment.
Yeah, I think at Montgomery we did over the pandemic strive to launch a similar platform to you, Rakeem. It's been a bit more challenging for us as we don't have a publishing house, we don't have kind of editors who can supply that content. So we've gone through the last kind of 12, 18 months making really strong partnerships within those sectors and leveraging our partners and their content and sharing that with our communities. Again, bringing us more into that food, drink, hospitality, thought leadership sector and not just being that event that sort of, like you said, pops up 3 months out and just demands you to register.
Okay. Anything to add on that? Or shall I go on to my next question, which I've got
Yeah,
special?
no, it's very similar for us. Like, we're not just an event that pops up once a year. We try and keep in touch with our community all year round. So that be events that we've got going on, different kind of events. We've got newsletters, online events. So it's keeping in touch with your community the entire year, because if you do only pop up once a year, your community might not remember you from a year ago. So it's having touch points for the entire year. I think that's really important.
Okay, great. So when we talk about community in events, I guess that can mean a lot of different things to different people. You can have attendees, there's speakers, there's exhibitors, it might be judges for awards ceremonies, it could be ambassadors. There's a whole range of people in an event community. To you, Maxi, is there a particular group that you see better results from or that you prioritise as part of your marketing when you're trying to use community to get more attendees?
So for us, it varies for each campaign, but we tend to see really good results from our attendees and speakers. So our previous event that we held here at the XL in October, we got over 800 registrations from our attendees and speakers. So for us, we know that some of our attendees and speakers have such vast networks that we should really try and encourage them to advocate for us, because we know that it's just going to reach a much bigger audience. So personally, I think the key to getting them to advocate for you is making it as simple as possible, because that's the thing. I mean, I'm sure you guys have had a similar thing where obviously you do like your normal email marketing campaign and your social marketing campaign, but being able to get your network of attendees and speakers to share with their network, it just allows you to be visible to a much bigger audience than you would be if you weren't to leverage those.
And is that the same for the rest of you? Is there a particular sector of your community that's good for growing attendance, or is it across the board?
For Speciality and Fine Food Fair, we do leverage our ambassadors. So they're either consultants or industry experts throughout the fine food world. And we find, like Maxi said, around having that great network and that great presence on social media and that really strong following, they tend to bring us good results in terms of pre-reg and then conversion. I think it's trying to leverage that audience that is your most engaged, and they are normally the people that are invested. So it is your speakers, ambassadors, judges. It's those kind of that level.
Yeah, it's the same for us. We used to hone in a lot on our partnerships, and we still do, but there's a lot more we can do with organic content. So yeah, like these two have honed in on that. So yeah, it's going well for us at Closer Still, and we're investing less in our partnerships and more in their network.
Okay, cool. So back to Sophie, what do you find is the best way to get your community referring your events for you? So we've talked about them doing it, but it's one thing identifying that here's an opportunity. How do you get your event community engaged for you? And when you've tried to do it, have you experienced any resistance or pushback from them on doing that?
I think it's following on from what Maxi said around making it as easy and as simple as possible. Obviously, Gleanin is a great tool for that, as we can share the links and people can, it's very much like a one-click process, which is fabulous to promote your attendance to event or your participation. I think it's not necessarily pushback, but I think we've found it's a bit harder with our exhibitors. They're obviously very busy with their stand builds and kind of more of the operational side. And so some of the marketing communications can get a bit lost in the mix. We always try to promote that it's a partnership when you exhibit our events, and there's only, we obviously do all the marketing and we're here to support you. But as an exhibitor, you need to be promoting yourself as well. So that's probably one of the areas that we tend to struggle with. Speakers are usually pretty good, but obviously being an event organizer, we want them to promote months and months in advance. And they usually promote a couple of days before because they're either speaking at other events or, they are very busy people. So that's another kind of, not resistance, I would say, but yeah, it would be great if they could promote a bit earlier.
So I guess engagement is one thing, but resistance isn't so much of a problem then. So it's getting them to do it. It's not like they're saying, I'm not going to do it. So which I guess is positive. Okay, cool. So Rakim, let's look into the future. What are your plans for community marketing for next year at Closer Still?
So there's two things, and the first one is an investment in our people and new talent coming into the business, because not everyone necessarily understands what community marketing means to them. So we're going to have a huge upskilling program at the beginning of next year for all of our marketers to understand the benefits of it, what's worked for all of our shows across the business, and so they can utilize that themselves. And then the second part is investing in new systems. So we've seen what has worked over the past 12 months. Well, we'll know next year what has worked. And then we're going to go out to tender to look for new solutions and new system partners, because the providers that we're using now, some of them are really great, but they don't necessarily work for our whole business. We're a business of 4 portfolios, and working with one company for everyone doesn't always necessarily work, especially for our healthcare portfolio. We have worked with a lot of pharma companies. There's a lot of regulations around what content you can put out and how you gatekeep content. So we're going to shift what partners and what systems we're working with.
Cool. And anybody else planning on changing or doing anything different next year, or is it it's embedded in your plans now?
I don't think we're planning on doing anything too drastically different to what we are now in terms of community marketing, because we've got quite a good plan in place. But I think it's kind of focusing on some different groups. So as I said earlier, for us, our attendees and speakers work really well for us. Similar to you, though, we do have a bit of trouble with exhibitors sometimes. It's just getting the right contact. They're very busy, so it's really having to push with them how them promoting the event can also benefit them as well, obviously, as well as us. I think another sort of group that we'll probably look into more is our partners and also influencers or brand ambassadors. So I think they're another big potential that we could look at, because currently our focus is on attendees, speakers and exhibitors, but I think the way that the tool works, we could really use it better if we introduce it to influencers and brand ambassadors as well, because at the end of the day they've also got a vast network as well as attendees and speakers. So I think that's just kind of something that we'll probably focus on for future campaigns, and hopefully we see good results from them as well.
I think you touched on a really good point there, which is that actually it's about making them appreciate that this is for them and not for you. It's very easy for it to just look like, well, it's just the organiser trying to get me to do their marketing for them. Whereas actually if you're a speaker, as we know, it's quite nice to have some people in the room. Thanks for coming. If you're an exhibitor, obviously, you want them on your stand. So it's really in their interest to do it. And for attendees, it's just great to sort of let your friends know you're going, your old contacts, and meet up with them in the show. So I think that's an important part of your community marketing approach, is about making sure that your community understand that they're doing this for themselves and not for you. So I had a last question to put to you all, but I'll start with Maxi again. So how does community marketing fit into your overall marketing strategy now? Is it, we had the question at the beginning, it's clearly embedded in a lot of people's marketing strategies, but how important is it in the list of things that you're doing when you're planning your marketing campaign each year?
Yeah, so for us, it is a core element to our marketing strategy now. People trust people, so if I was to receive an email or get tagged in a social post from a colleague of mine telling me to check out an event, I'm much more likely to look into it than if I was to see a paid ad for it. So I think trust is a big thing as well. So I think if you hear about an event through a colleague or a friend, you are more likely to do your research and potentially go. So I think it's such a big thing, and for us it's definitely a core element to our strategy now.
And core for everybody else as well? Or growing? Bigger part? Is it replacing other activities? Is it taking priority?
I think I obviously agree with Max. It is a really, really core element of our marketing, and it comes back to understanding what your audience want to gain from your events. This year we've done a lot of a deep dive analysis into why people attend our events, what they're coming to get out of it, and it's generating that year-round trust that they have within those event brands. So it's trying just to generate and move those visitors along to become your brand advocates. So they invite their teams to attend, they recommend your content, your gated content, to their colleagues, their friends, and they turn to your event brand as that industry leader.
So yeah, I think obviously I would agree. We believe in this at Gleaning, that we live in a world now where there is so much noise in our socials, in every aspect of our life, and you are much more likely to do something if a friend or a colleague recommends it. So it's something that event organisers can really leverage to get better attendance at their events. So I've kind of covered the main questions that I was going to ask. I've got one I might come back to, but I thought I'd see if we had any questions from the floor. I'm going to have to look on the app if anybody's too shy, or people can put their... Oh, look, it's up there. Okay. Oh, yes, that's a really good question, actually. Do you use incentives, or do you think that incentives are an important part, or will you look at doing that in the future as part of your community marketing campaigns?
So for us at Closer Still, I wouldn't necessarily say we use incentives, because we're gatekeeping the content. So, well, that kind of is an incentive, actually, because it's content which is hidden. They don't know what's necessarily there. We can put out feelers for what's there, and then they're keen to be part of it. So that is essentially an incentive. But we haven't necessarily sent out like gifts or done competitions, but that's definitely something we could look to do next year.
We did trial this with our exhibitors for Speciality and Fine Food Fair. So we offered a £200 bar tab for the company that invited and registered and obviously attended the event. However, it did not quite entice our exhibitors enough, so it wasn't a strategy which I think that will move forward to our next campaign. With visitors, we do incentivize them with obviously referring our events, and we do use incentives for like the post-event survey. But yeah, I think it's always a little bit hit and miss. That's what we've found.
We always use incentives. So we find them really effective. So like for our attendees, when they register for the event, we obviously have the Glean In pop-up at the end of the registration form, which encourages them to refer the event to a colleague. And we always have an incentive for it. So for us, obviously, we have a technology event. So we have a piece of tech. It could be, I don't know, like an Apple Watch or an iPad or something. And we've actually found when we have had a lower incentive, we haven't had as many people share. So we've kind of like recognized it mid-campaign and said, right, shall we up the incentive just to see if it makes a difference? And it did make a difference. So for us, that's a crucial thing to add in for all of them. We also do it for our speakers as well, but it's not the same as a piece of tech. We say, like, you can donate to charity, and we also do it for exhibitors as well. So it's just something nice for us to add in, and it also keeps those relationships going as well. So once we finish the event, we then get in contact with the people that have won those prizes, and it's just really nice to keep in touch with them. They're always super pleased. They sometimes will then post it on their social media channels. So I think for us, it's kind of been a good learning curve for us to run an event with having a lower incentive, being able to up it and being able to recognise that has made a difference. So for us, it does seem to have quite a big impact.
Excellent. And obviously, across our customer base, we've got lots of people who are doing various different things along these lines. So certainly it doesn't necessarily even need to be an incentive. A lot of organisers now have speaker contracts, partly just to make sure they turn up. You know what it's like if you're an organiser. You ask someone to speak and then a week before they go, oh no, can't be bothered, too busy. So if you have a contract, you can include in the contract a commitment to share on their socials at least once, at least twice, or whatever. The kind of things that Maxi's referred to there were draws, which is great. And in fact, some of our US customers say, well, you know, our audience are quite senior, so why would they want to get some Amazon vouchers or something like that? It's not in their interest. But so for a more senior audience, what some organisers are doing is saying for every referral that you make to your community, we'll make a $1 donation to an industry charity or something like that. So there's lots of different ways you can get creative with incentives. I think one of the challenges, which brings me on to the other question that I was going to ask you guys, is that it depends what you're incentivising as well. Because if you're incentivising conversions, that might not actually be something that's very easy to measure. And so again, a question to the panel is, how do you measure your success? Is it conversions, understanding that last click attribution is difficult and cookie rules are going to change that? Or is it about the awareness that the referrals are creating on social media? Is it about the number of clicks on the posts? Is it something else? Anyone want to answer that question, or do you not want to share how you measure your results?
So for us, the most important thing to us is attendance to our shows. So we do measure conversions, but we're really starting to hone in on how connected we're becoming to the community. So we do measure impressions, clicks, and how many shares, but also then we tap into who it is that has been sharing the content. So for us, we've been able to analyse that there were some key influencers that were sharing our content just based on them registering for the event, a pop-up coming up, and then them sharing the banner. And that's essentially, we've got that for free because we haven't had to pay for it, rather than going out looking for influencers. So tapping into who it actually is that is sharing the content is going to become quite important for us.
Okay, so let me see. I think the first question's disappeared off the bottom. So So how do you encourage your attendees to promote your events? What do you do exactly aside from having a button? So we might have touched it. Is there anything else that you do apart from use Glean In? Nothing Anything else that you would, how can we encourage more community engagement on LinkedIn? Has anyone got any ideas on that?
For us, we find that our speakers are really active on LinkedIn, and I don't know if it just works this way, but we find that as soon as a couple of our speakers start to post, a lot of our team then start to engage with their posts, commenting, liking, sharing, and it seems to start off a trend. So as soon as we get some speakers post, it just starts the rest of the speakers off. And I think it helps with like panels, because if one of the panelists is to post on LinkedIn, one of the other panelists are likely to then see it, and then they will then share with their network. So yeah, I think it's also getting your team to engage as well. So that's something that we've been trying to focus on recently, is like employee advocacy. But it's also really important for your employees to be active on social media. And it also goes back to the point earlier where it's not just a benefit to the brand and the business, it's also a benefit to their personal profile. It looks really good for people to be active on LinkedIn. And we always try and encourage the team to like and comment and share our speakers' posts, and also attendees as well. So that probably helps in getting other people to promote as well, because it just means that more people hear about it, and then other people are just more keen to promote it.
It's the beauty of hashtags, isn't it? You can search, if you can get your community to use hashtags, you can search for those hashtags, then you can share, you can post, you can help to spread it further.
Yeah, another thing on LinkedIn as well, like similar to what you were saying, like getting your employees to engage on there, but it's also getting them to post in groups. There's a hell of a lot of groups on LinkedIn that you can tap into, so it's ensuring that whatever show you work on or whatever brand you work for, you join the groups that are within that sector, and then you start posting content about that's related to your brand or show or whatever it is that you do. You've got to like keep that content fresh and try not to make it so like an advertisement. You've got to make it more personal.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree entirely. There's a question: how do you engage with your communities during show days, if indeed you do? Is that something that you try to do?
I think that's one that's quite difficult sometimes. So it depends what kind of events that you run. But for us, we run large-scale events. So when you're on site talking to your community, we do it through social media, but everybody gets busy. You kind of forget to post on social media. You know what it's like. So we try to pre-schedule some of our content, and we try to start talking to the audience, like come to X stand, or like you can experience this at the show. But yeah, it all comes down to time and resource, doesn't it?
Anybody else doing anything on site?
Yeah, I think it's the same for our team as well. We run large-scale events, and there's always not enough bodies on the ground for us to cover every aspect while we're at the events. But it's making sure that we are sharing any important competitions our exhibitors are running, or any featured sessions, and you just leveraging those social media channels, the hashtags, story features, just to try and keep the brand present whilst we're all at the event.
It's very difficult once you're on site. If you're all organisers, you know how busy you all are on site. But it's actually very important if you can do it. People make decisions at very short notice. So if you can get people making a buzz about your show, then that can help to get the show busy on that traditionally quiet last day potentially. So it's definitely a good question, something to think about. There's a couple more questions there that we'll try and take. So with an impending recession and budget cuts, how important will community marketing be in 2023? I think we've already talked about the fact it's going to be important. But in terms of cost, is it a more cost-effective marketing channel for you in the light of impending budget cuts?
I think for us, for the money that we put into it, we get a lot from it. So if you compare community marketing or advocacy to paid social or paid media, we gain a lot from community marketing for what goes into it. So for us, even though obviously with the recession and everything, you have to be mindful of spending and everything like that. But for the cost of like what we pay for Glean In, we get a lot out of it. And we mentioned before about conversions and stuff, which is obviously really important. But also it's about brand awareness. For us, it's not just about getting conversions for one event and then moving on to the next event. It's that brand awareness piece. And for us, that's definitely evolved. Like we run these like smaller leaders summits now, and we actually have got to the point where we're getting messages from attendees and speakers to say that they're really keen to share because they know the brand. They come to our events all year round and they want to post about being at our event on their social media channels. So yeah, I think for how much goes into it, I think you can gain a lot from it, and obviously you have to be mindful, but I just think it's something that's definitely worthwhile, and obviously, as we've all said, it's definitely like a core element to our marketing strategy anyway.
Anything to add, or no? Okay, fine. So I think this might be the last question, unless there's any to come from the floor. So this is quite specific. Let's look at this in two ways, cost and human resource. So what percentage of your resources are you investing into community marketing? There's also a why. I mean, hopefully the why will be a bit obvious if you discuss it. But I mean, in terms of your marketing team, if we look at your marketing teams and your marketing budgets, how much is going on community marketing in terms of your team's time now? Is it taking up a lot of their time? Is it something that they're spending 5% of their time against other things, or what's the mix?
I don't think it's just down to the marketing team to invest in community marketing. I think it's down to the whole event team, the whole brand team. We always try to encourage our sales team to make sure that when they're dealing with exhibitors, once they've signed up a company to exhibit, that they are making sure that they've got the tools and assets to help promote their involvement at the event, or that they're sharing any news that comes from the brands. And same with the content team, you know, it does sit with them as well, which are parallel to the marketing team. But it's their main objective as well, is to help encourage speakers and to make sure that they're promoting the community marketing aspect as well. I think with obviously using a tool like Glean In, once you've set up all the graphics and you've shared the links and all the copies written, it doesn't feel like it's a huge investment in time, especially if you look at other parts of our campaigns. So I think I wouldn't know what specific percent I would put on it. But yeah, I don't think it just sits within marketing. I think it should be the whole team.
Okay.
I completely agree with what you're saying. It sits with the whole event team. But one thing that I'm trying to work towards next year is with the company is that we're going to set KPIs for the marketing teams and content teams that hone in on just community marketing that falls into investing in our people again. So they need to upskill, understand what it truly means to them and how it's going to benefit their show, and then you incentivize them by working on community marketing.
If you incentivize them well enough, it'll be 100% of their time, and then that will answer that question there. There's a question: how do you convince the C-suite leadership to invest in community marketing? I assume that's a question of the leadership of the event organising company, not C-suite leadership, attendees or communities at an event. So has it been a difficult job for you to... I see Max's boss is here, so you've obviously convinced him. How do you convince your bosses that this is the right thing to do? Have you had to? Is it a no-brainer for them?
Luckily for us, it hasn't taken much convincing. But I think that's where it goes back to the brand piece, where everyone needs to believe in the brand. And if your community, at the end of the day, if your community value your event and your brand, they will advocate for you. But definitely having that support massively helps. Like when I mentioned earlier about us trying to focus more on our employees becoming more advocates, having the support from your MD, trying to encourage people, it massively helps because, they might receive an email from someone in marketing to say, right, can everyone help promote the event? Also, we're running an incentive. But to get that support from up above massively helps because, and also if they're doing it as well, James is very good at posting on LinkedIn. So I feel like it kind of sets an example, and once the majority of the team start to post, everyone else kind of follows. So yeah, luckily for us, it hasn't been a problem.
Nothing to add? Okay. I mean, I think if I was to answer that question on both of those viewpoints, so if you're talking about convincing your bosses, it's exactly the things that we've been talking about here. It's becoming increasingly obvious that you're getting less of a return on your traditional marketing channels. We live in this trust economy, and you're more likely to do something if someone you know is doing it. And we know it from our own personal experience, and the C-suite know that as well. So that's the message to them. I think if you have got a C-suite audience in your community, it goes back to that question that we talked about earlier. It's about making them understand that they're doing it for their own benefit. So if you've got a senior person who's speaking, these guys want to have a full room just the same way anybody would. If it's a C-suite attendee, what are their motivations for going? Is it about networking? Is it about education? Is it about finding out the latest products and services? And it's about tapping into their motivations for going and getting them to share that with their network. So unless anybody else has got anything to add, and if there are no more questions, we've got a question from the floor. Do we have a microphone for the floor? I'll come to you.
Thank you so much. So we do have a community of clients, and we have a series of events for them over the year. And at the beginning, they're super enthusiastic about sharing about it for the first event, but there are so many during the year that then it's fading away. And it's not that they're not engaged, but they don't think about promoting again the fact that they're going to attend the next one and the next one. For us, it's important because it generates a lot of buzz online, but it's not happening. How do you keep the momentum? How do you ask them, I don't know, what's the incentives here? And we cannot offer anything to them when you talked about incentives because they see that as bribe. So
that's quite an interesting challenge, because if you've got the same audience at multiple events over the year, that's maybe a bit unique. And I'm not sure whether that's something that you guys have experience of.
I think we have experienced a similar problem where we were running webinars for our online platform, and we were doing them kind of either once a month or even twice a month. And yes, the speakers are different each month or each webinar, but it's very hard to continue to be pushing out the similar messaging, sign up for the webinar, this is happening now, this is happening now. I don't have an answer. I don't have, the one answer that helped us with it. I think maybe trying to refine the content a bit more, using more of like what Rakeem was saying around the gated content, weaving that into the messaging, and just trying to mix it up a bit. It is something that we have experienced with our online events.
And I think it's also about which parts of your community that you're tapping into for that. Speakers, even if they speak at each one of them, it's really about making it easy for them. And incentivizing them if possible. I think for attendees you do have more of a challenge, but it goes back to the point that I was making earlier about tapping into their personal motivations. If these events are about networking, then they're going to want to let their friends know that they're going, or their colleagues, or the people they've worked with. And so, trying to identify what those motivations are and tapping into those. But I fully accept you've got a challenge if it's the same people again and again. So good luck with that. Any other questions? All right, well, I think to sort of sum it up, we community marketing is clearly fundamental to all of you as well. I hope that today has given you a few sort of tips and ideas about some of the things that you can do. I think what we all agree here is that as traditional forms of marketing become more and more challenged, either through cost or through digital noise or just through the simple fact that direct mail doesn't work anymore, community marketing is an increasingly important component of your marketing strategy. So if you want to learn more about how you can do it with Lean In, our panel have very kindly mentioned us a few times. I don't want to make this a plug, but we're over on B23 if you want to come and see us. But with that said, I would be very grateful if you could give our three wonderful panelists a big round of applause. Thank you very much.